Anyway, I'm so happy to be here with you today. My first time in Peru, my first time at Fest, and I'm so grateful for such an incredible crowd in the last session of the day. With so many amazing speakers to hear, I'm so honored and humbled that you came to listen to me and to share and have a great conversation about culture. So I wanted to start by sharing something that we do at Stitch Fix. So quick note about Stitch Fix. So I know that Gorilla mentioned that I've been at Starbucks and Lululemon, but Stitch Fix is a company that I'm at today. And Stitch Fix actually combines data science, so artificial intelligence, and human stylists to actually help people find clothes that they love. So that you actually don't have to go online and go to e-commerce and find clothes. It actually magically sends you 5 perfect items in a box, and you try them on, you keep what you like, and you send back what you don't. So that's Stitch Fix. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Stitch Fix. It's awesome. But one of the things that we do at Stitch Fix, it's sort of a tradition that we have, is what's called clearing. And so I have a clearing, and I'll tell you what a clearing is, and I'll teach you about a clearing because it's actually, I think, a very useful tool. So a clearing, and I learned this at Lululemon from some very smart people, is actually when something is on your mind and you can't concentrate unless you say it. Does that ever happen to anybody here? It's probably happening right now, right? Maybe somebody's thinking, I have to go pick up my kids from school, or, geez, this day has been so long. I hope Margo says something that's interesting, right? So there may be things you're thinking. And so what a clearing is it's a way to say it. So maybe before you're starting a meeting is to say a clearing. And then when you say a clearing, you say a commitment. And then you can just let it go and be present. So I realized that as I was preparing for this talk that I had a clearing, that I only realized this today. And what I realized is that I'm here to talk about culture. And I am so impressed by the culture of Intercore, and I genuinely mean that. Like from the moment I had the first phone call to be invited to speak, everyone I've met and every experience I've had has shown me what an incredible culture that you have. On top of that, my other clearing is the culture of Peru is amazing. So I've only been here since Monday morning, and already I can just feel what an incredible culture that Peru is. So I was thinking, here's my clearing, what am I going to say to you about culture? Because you know culture, you have culture. So that's my clearing, but so here's what my commitment is, because unless you have a commitment, it's just a complaint, and you don't want to have a complaint. So my commitment is that I want to share with you what I've learned at some really great companies, so at Starbucks, at Lululemon, at Stitch Fix, about culture, and why culture matters, and why culture can change, honestly, can change the course of the company, and it can change people's lives. All the people that you touch, whether it's the people within the company, or it's the people that you're serving, your customers, your clients, everyone you interact with is going to be impacted by your culture. So my commitment is to really humbly share with you today what I know and what I've learned, and then I want to hear from you. So I'm excited to hear your questions and excited to hear your thoughts and ideas. Does that sound good? You guys up for that? Okay, good. We'll do that. Okay, so let's get started. So what is culture? So this is kind of an interesting one. Wait, where am I going to stand? Okay, good. I'll stand over here, but I don't want to fall off the stage. We've talked a lot about culture, even just in the last 24 hours. So I heard Trisha speak last night. She sort of showed us the box of culture and all the different things in culture. But I wanted to just sort of take a moment and say, okay, like, what is it? What is culture? Culture, simply, as we have here, I'm not going to read the slide, but it's all the things that you would want people to be doing in your company when no one is watching, right? So it could be like when the coffee maker is empty. In your company, does somebody go fill up the coffee maker? Or does somebody like walk away and wait for someone else to do it? People are laughing and they're like, okay, I've done that a few times, so have I. So those are all the very, very small micro interactions and behaviors that really help us to be able to see what is the culture of the company, and that's so important. One of the other things I also wanted to say about culture is that there is no one right culture. And I understand from Intercore, there are so many companies within Intercore. You have different clients, you have different, maybe different cultures, but I know you have a common vision, which is incredible. So there is not one necessarily right culture. Starbucks had an amazing culture. Lululemon had an amazing culture. Stitch Fix has an amazing culture, but they're very unique. And what I've learned, and it's been interesting listening to all the conversations about digital transformation in China, which is what I've seen coming from Silicon Valley, where I've worked for the last 4.5 years. The downfall of companies, so where they haven't succeeded, wasn't in the product that they built. It's actually been in their lack of attention to their culture. So we can think of like the disasters that have happened maybe with Uber or with, even other companies that have survived those conversations about culture and the things that have happened. It's actually been the culture where things have actually fallen apart and it impacts the business. One of the ones that I was actually thinking about as I was sitting today is Microsoft. So Microsoft was, of course, big, giant, massive, successful, and then it got slow, right? And it got disrupted by other companies. One of the reasons why, there's an incredible article in Vanity Fair magazine about it a couple of years ago. Why did they fail? They failed because of their talent system. So they started to do forced ranking with people. And then that made people very competitive. And then people didn't want to transfer to other places in the company. And you know what it did? It killed innovation in Microsoft. Now they've done a really good job of bringing that back. But that goes to part 2 of what I said about culture. It isn't just the behaviors, it's the policies, it's the programs, it's all the rituals that you have that reinforce the culture that you have. It's how you pay people, it's how many rules you have, it's what your policies are. Those are all the things that are always showing people what the culture is. And it'll come through. So that's culture. Okay. So what is culture not? So this is a controversial slide. So, culture, I know. What? It doesn't mean that. Why, Margo? You must be crazy. Because, one of the worst things I think you can do in building a culture is trying to make everyone happy and trying to be all things to all people. You want your culture in some way to be polarizing. And by polarizing, I don't mean to be abusive or harassing, but you want people to be able to say, I want that, or I want no part of that. If everyone likes it, it's like nothing. So that's really why I want to kind of contrast that to just saying that it isn't just being on best places to work. It isn't having the best food in the kitchen and a chef on staff. That's something that happens a lot in Silicon Valley. Everybody's like, oh, how many kombucha, or how many green juices do you have in the fridge? How many 20 varieties? That is not culture. Having the best happy hour, not culture. Okay? It is also, and I'm looking at Anna, who will be joining me later, not the sole responsibility of the human resources team. Oh, I know. It isn't. Yay, they're in the front here and they're happy. But seriously, and I say that in all seriousness, these are all serious things, even though I'm saying them in a funny way. It's dangerous to have people think that it is solely the responsibility of that team. Because one of the things that I've learned in every company that I've been at that has amazing culture is that every single person generates the culture. That's how it scales, that's how it grows, and it can't just live in one place and have it be outsourced. I know when I was moving from Lululemon and thinking about working I wanted to move into the tech industry, I talked to a lot of different CEOs and founders. And I was very picky about the one that I picked. So I get to work with Katrina Lake, who's an amazing woman who founded Stitch Fix. But I went to work with Katrina because she cared as much about culture as she did about the company that she was creating. And really, nobody who's an HR person ever wants to be in a company where they're the only one who cares. And so I know that's not how it is at Intercorp. I know that you all care, and that's why you're here. Okay, so what are some of the things to think about in terms of creating a culture that really helps you win? The first one I've already mentioned, which is personalize it. Personalize. Companies are like people. Cultures are like people. You can't just take one thing that worked in another place and just stick it over the top, right? That's very trendy in the HR world or the culture. Oh, nobody's doing performance reviews anymore. Okay, great. Out with performance reviews. Nobody's going to do them at Intercorp. It doesn't always work. So you really want to look at what is it that's going to work uniquely for your company and create that. There are amazing ideas from other companies. You should definitely consider them and bring them in. But you actually want to make sure it works for you, that it's consistent. Having an aligned leadership team is super important. So you've got to have that alignment at the top. I know there's a lot of power in grassroots, but people are watching, and all of you are leaders, and they're watching to see what you do, and that's really where you want to have that aligned team. We talked already about every employee generating it, and I'm just going to say that again. You can't have people who want to just consume the culture, right? Who are just sort of waiting for you to feed culture to them. You want people that are actively engaged. That's how you scale. Because the bigger you get, and you're already a huge company, there's no way you're going to be able to touch every single person with that impact and create that culture. So you really want to make sure that every employee is up for that and generating it. This one's really important. Hire to it and fire to it. That sounds easy, but it's hard. And sometimes it's easy for us both ways. One of the things we've been talking a lot about at Stitch Fix is when people are very good with culture, but not necessarily great at their job, what do you do then? So it's easy in those situations to say, oh, but Margo's so great, she's so cultural, oh, she's so Stitch Fix, but actually she's not really performing in her role. So that's one side of it. On the other side of it, you could also have a person who is brilliant. And in Silicon Valley, we call them a bad word, so I'm going to swear. I hope that's okay in Peru. I'll find out. But brilliant assholes, right? Brilliant assholes. Oh, he's so smart. We don't care. He does the fastest algorithm. He's an asshole. Nobody wants to work with him. You don't want to tolerate that either because people are watching. That's another signal that you're sending. One of the other things I want to talk about briefly is local traditions, and I think this really applies to Intercore because you have so many businesses. One of the things is, when you're thinking about culture and values, is you really want to think about what do you want to have to be consistent and what do you actually want to be different. And so that's something for you to really explore, and I'm sure you've already done that, but what are the things that are going to be different in the bank, the group that is the bank, or the group that works with the schools? And there may be things that are more traditions, is what I would call them, or more specific, that may show up and be unique to those particular groups. The last thing I want to mention about what really makes for a winning culture is transparency. And by transparency, I mean be very explicit about what the culture is. At Stitch Fix, we have what we call an operating system, and it's a document that says what our values are, what our leadership principles are, and what we hire people for. We talk about it and teach it all the time. We repeat. You can't get tired. And you really, if you're growing your culture, you really want to be able to codify it, you want it to be explicit, you want it to be everywhere, so that people know what it is, and again, they can opt in or they can opt out. Okay. So let's transition to talking a little bit about innovative cultures. Okay, so this is something I know that is very, very important to the conversation that you're having here. There's a lot of conversation about digital transformation and cultural transformation at Intercore. So some of the things that I've learned along the way in terms of what really makes for a culture of innovation. What are some of the common things? The most important thing I would say, although it's hard because these are all important, is having a clear vision, strategy, and goals. Now that sounds like very vanilla and very obvious, but why is that so important? Because if you have that high-level vision, and everyone really understands what that means, and that's a really important thing, because you do have a vision about making Peru the best place for families to live, right? And so, but what does that mean? And that's something I think that will be, something that you continue to explore and that I'm sure that you're doing, but really helping people to understand what does that mean and how does that connect to the work that I do. But having a clear vision and strategy and goals allows people to innovate about how you're going to get there. So that you don't have to tell people every step of the way. So here's how we're going to get it. Here's how we're going to do this. What you really want is to open up that innovation and creativity. And what will happen when you do that is people will come up with things that you never even dreamed that you would have ever thought of. One of the examples at Stitch Fix is we have something that's called Style Shuffle. And it's a game. So it's a game that you play on your phone. And you pick out clothes that you like. You say, I like this, I like that. You give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And it's really fun. But what it's actually doing is teaching the algorithm. And what we see is that people who actually are using that tool get better results in terms of the clothing they're sent. And the people who actually don't use it are still benefiting from it. But here's the nugget about the story. There's a guy at Stitch Fix called Chris Moody, and he's a data scientist. Chris was so passionate about our mission, which is helping people transforming the way people find what they love. He worked on this on the weekend, on his off time, just for fun, because he thought it was a really cool idea. So that's what you want to inspire and create in people, is them feeling so excited to the vision that they're going to go off and make things and innovate things that you never actually ever thought about. Okay, another thing that's important, you've talked a little bit about this, is, I've heard people say make mistakes. But the most important thing is, what do you do once a mistake is made? How do people act about mistakes? And this is where where the rubber meets the road, which is your actions have to align with what you say. So if we say, oh, we want innovation and we tolerate mistakes, but if a mistake is made, it's like, what did you do? I'm sorry, that's pretty scary. But what did you do? You're clearly having a dissonance between what you're telling people and what you're showing people. Authenticity versus politics. This is one that we've really explored a lot at Stitch Fix, and authenticity is becoming one of our values. And what I mean by authenticity is that feeling that you can 100% be yourself. 100% bring your gifts, bring your unique qualities to work. Now that's different than politics, which is, I have to be a certain way. I have to act a certain way to be able to get promoted. Now, I'm not saying this is like this isn't the thing about being a brilliant asshole, right? We're still talking about being respectful to people. But this is me being able to say, this is Margo. This is what Margo brings, and really honoring and respecting those talents. People can relax. People can do their best work when they're able to work in an environment where they're not worried all the time about having to be something that they're actually not. And it's interesting, I think a lot of the conversation about diversity and inclusion, which is a very big conversation in the US, and I'm assuming is and will continue to be all over the world, that is really about authenticity, is being able to have acceptance and to create environments where people can bring themselves and bring their ideas to life, which will really drive innovation. Another one that I love is no one team is king. So it's one of the things that we talk about at Stitch Fix, because we have data scientists, we have stylists, so we have people who work in their house on the computer and style fixes, and we have engineers, and we have people who buy the clothing. Like, we have so many different people, but there's not one function in the company that says it's better than another function. So it's not like, truthfully at Google, and it's fine, because this is their culture. Engineers are the king at Google. Everything is really about the engineers. But at Stitch Fix, what we decided to do is say, everyone's talents matter, and that we're going to get the best ideas by combining and actually being better together. Last one is about principles versus policies. Now this one, I don't know how this will work at Intercore, but it's something that we really have thought about, which is giving people more freedom and empowerment as opposed to having a lot of rules, by really coming up with principles and saying, look, these are the principles that we adhere to. So we have principles for how we recruit, how we compensate people, how we work. And they're not rules, but they're just loose-based, principles, if you will. I can say principles, but they're concepts that would really help guide people in terms of not having to tell people what to do. So again, it goes back to empowerment. So finally, I wanted to leave you with this, and then we'll go to some Q&A with Anna. But, one of the questions I've had, so when I was at Lululemon went from a $4 million company to $2 billion company in 4 years. Stitch Fix, when I started working at Stitch Fix, there were 50 people, and now there are almost 7,000 people in the company, and that's been in 4.5 years. So I've seen a lot of growth, and I've seen a lot of scale. And one of the things that people always say to me is, how are you going to do it? People would say, how will we do this? How are we possibly going to be able to grow the company? And it comes back to the concept that I started with, which is, how are we going to do it? We do it with every single one of you. And how do we do it is by recognizing that every single person here is a leader. It doesn't matter what your title is you are a leader. And it really starts with you in terms of what you're going to do. And I really would say, and I was talking a lot with Anna when we were preparing about cultural transformation, And I think it has to start with soul searching for yourself. So really, like, I would hope at the end of this talk or at the end of the day, you actually say to yourself, what have I learned? What do I need to unlearn? Which is another really important question for transformation. What do I know that's holding me back, right? How can I unlearn that and start with the beginner's mind? Am I up for cultural transformation? Do I really want to do it? Or do I actually want something else? And the answer is actually fine, whatever it is. But I think by being a leader and being able to ask yourself the questions and share the answers with your peers, with your teams, and be vulnerable. That's how you build trust, is by being able to share, like, hey, we're on this journey. I'm not really sure where this is going, and I know we're talking about a lot of transformation, and I was at Fest all day, and I learned a lot of interesting concepts, and I'm excited, but I also don't maybe know what the next steps are. People will respect you for your vulnerability and your honesty. And the last thing I wanted to say is just this phrase. This was taught to me by Chip Wilson, who's the founder of Lululemon. And I remember it was my first time leading an HR organization. I got the big job, and I was riding in a cab with him, and I was super nervous. And I said, I'm worried about the org structure that I'm going to have at Lululemon. Like, what's my org structure going to be? And he looked at me and he said, org structure? I hired you to create a future that otherwise would not exist. And I went, wow. And so I leave you with that, which is that is really your role and your privilege, and what's exciting is that for you as a leader, what you have the opportunity to do is to impact people and to create a future that otherwise would never have happened unless it was for you. So with that, I'm going to invite Anna up to the stage. Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Margo. I think that you've said some things that were quite provocative for us, so we are going to dig a little bit on that. So you know that at Intercorp, we've been talking about digital transformation for quite a few years, and now we've started to realize that we do actually need to talk about continuous transformation, because that is the only way of going forward. What do you think there are the underlying traits that enables organizations to evolve continuously?
That's a good question. I think there's a couple different thoughts about this, which is I think you want to decide what you want to evolve continuously. Because continuously evolving could be kind of exhausting for people. And I think what I understand in that, though, is that you want to be relevant and you want to be challenging for growth and to be able to not get complacent. And so I think it's important, some of the things that I mentioned about the culture of innovation is just creating an environment where there's a lot of feedback and a lot of communication, where there's a lot of transparency, where there's a willingness to actually let people experiment and make mistakes and talk about that. And actually to be able to step back after experiments happen and be able to say that worked or that didn't work. I think that allows for continuous transformation. But I think it's really important to say what isn't going to change. So that may be like our vision isn't going to change. You can have a wonderful leader and a great CEO may say that the vision stays the same. But how we're going to achieve the vision may change over time. And having people get really comfortable with that.
What do you think that it's a killer for that continuous evolution? What kills that continuous evolution? What we should not do, definitely.
What you should not do. Make the mistakes that China made. I think did anybody come to the China talk? I think there's some interesting things in that, which is like, when you're creating this environment that's moving really fast, like how do you still create an environment that's actually friendly to people?
And safe
for people, and that actually where people can thrive and not be beaten down and have all that stress. I think that's really important. And I think it's very possible.
It is possible.
Yeah.
There is attention definitely.
There's attention for sure.
We can find a happy, sweet spot there. What have you learned that works transforming a culture?
Well, I think it might be hard to transform culture. I know, I'm provocative, but I don't want to just give you an easy answer because I don't know how many times I've actually transformed a culture. And so I think that in order to transform a culture, what I think has to happen is you have to change yourself. So like, if you're going to change the culture, you have to change, I have to change, CEO has to change, everybody actually has to change themselves and decide what that action is going to look like and talk about it.
And when we are transforming culture, do you think, or do you see a radical revolution, or do you see more incremental changes?
I would probably go radical, but that's just my nature. I mean, I would. I mean, why would I? And I'm saying seriously, why would I do that? Because I think I would declare it radically by saying, like, it was this, and now it's going to be that. And then I think the change to get there is going to be more incremental. But I think I wouldn't sort of stair step it to say, like, we're going to do a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. I think I would really say, this is what we're going for. This is the future vision. Because that's compelling to people. I think people want to be able to see that, and it's exciting. And I would want to know, as a person who worked at Interport, what was coming.
Where you are going.
Where we were going, as opposed to sort of like finding like a little breadcrumb trail.
And that links with what you were saying about transparency as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really to be transparent so that I could decide if I wanted to do that. And also, I could be part of it.
What would you advise to the people that are in the middle of this cultural transformation and feel that it's no longer for them? They don't feel comfortable.
I think I would talk to somebody about it. I think, first of all, I would encourage and have lots of, that's part of building great relationships where they could talk to their manager or, somebody that they trusted, just to be able to say, like, I don't know if I like this, or I don't know if I understand it. I think being able to create good communication and dialogue is important. But then I think you have to search your soul. I mean, ultimately, like, my goal is that everyone should be happy and fulfilled in life. And so I would want somebody then to be able to say, I think it's time for me to leave. And be able to be okay with that and celebrate that.
And a recognition for us that maybe that evolution is not for everyone.
Yeah, and that doesn't make them a bad person. It may be just not what they want, and it happens all the time. And it's harder for people if they hang on, I think. That's been my experience, even of myself. Sometimes it's really hard for people who love companies for them to let go. So I would imagine that people love working at Interport because it seems like a really great place to work. And so it may be really hard for them to be able to say, like, I love it, but it's not right for me anymore. And you may have to help somebody be able to figure that out.
Right. That's provocative. So, and another one. You also mentioned that, and I heard some signs of relief in the room, that HR does not define culture, and we shouldn't. Who should?
Everybody. I mean, now that's sort of a flip, but I mean, somebody has to be responsible for getting the work done, right? And so I think that when you're shaping a culture, you want to get input from people. At Stitch Fix, when we were creating our operating system, we went around and did focus groups throughout the whole company with people who worked in different parts of the company, and stylists and data scientists, and we asked them to describe what really the culture was. So we did sort of like a anthropological expedition. So I think you can do things like that to define it. I think you can have the leadership team define it. I think it has to be sort of more than just one team, and more than just the HR team.
Inclusive. Okay. And in the first, we are talking a lot about velocity with China, and we are also in the middle of this cultural transformation, and we want to push it forward quicker than we are. And we've been trying just establishing fluid cells, but we see more of a linear progression than an exponential progression. What would be your advice for us to accelerate that cultural transformation? Is it possible to accelerate it? Does it take a long time?
I think anything is possible. I really do. I think that if you really believe it and you want that to happen, I think that having the labs and the cells that you described is really interesting and helpful. And I think it's worked. But I think what's challenging about that may slow it down is people may say, oh, well, innovation is only for the Victorian lab. It's actually not for the bank. Or then the bank has its own innovation lab and they have to have it. But then all the other people that work at the bank don't get to be innovative because they're not in that lab. I'm just making this up. So I think that could, if you're not careful, it could slow it down a little bit. And so you mentioned to me something you're doing, which I love, which is having Innovation Kit for everyone. And that's one of the things I think can accelerate innovation is that people don't think it's something huge and big and scary. That, I think, can stop people with innovation where they'll think, well, my idea is never going to be big enough or good enough. And they judge the idea. I think everyone can innovate in their role, and it can be the smallest thing. Like, one of the people on my team sends out like a weekly newsletter, and she started innovating the way she did the newsletter every week. And everybody started reading it, and it was more interesting, and it made her job more fun. It could be something as small as that could actually make a big difference, and it makes the job more fun, and it gets more of the rapid acceleration that you're talking about.
So it's empowering us to be able to innovate as well.
Right, and having people feel that it's possible. You know, I think it's a little bit like last night when somebody was saying there's a feeling of like, we're so behind, or, you know, we need to catch up. But there's so much goodness and there is so much talent. It's just to really allow people to tap into that and create the space for that.
Great. What do you think, another controversial one, what do you think about providing monetary incentives to push forward transformation?
She wanted to ask me that one. Well, I think how you compensate people definitely is aligned to culture, or has to be aligned to culture. But I think, like, and this is just a hypothesis, I could be wrong about this, I think it only works for a short while. Like, I suspect if you say, like, we're going to start paying people to innovate, I think that it isn't going to just give people that desire and that excitement to be able to do that comes from within.
A genuine
excitement. Really a genuine excitement. I think you're going to have to give more money, and then more money, and then who knows what happens. You know, I don't want Intercore to go broke. I love Intercore, so I don't want you to have to do that. So I think you just want to be careful about that and thoughtful.
Tell us a little bit about experiments that you're running at the stage.
Yeah. Well, I was saying to Anna that I think experiments in the people and culture space is sometimes challenging because I've often wanted to experiment with how people are paid, but then I realize it's really hard to change it. You know, once you actually do it, it's a little hard to turn it around. But there's two things that are happening right now. One is we're actually changing our operating system. So we are adding a value, which is authenticity, and then we actually are changing what we hire for and how we describe what we hire for. And what we found is that some people are very attached to what we currently have because we've done such a good job of training people on it, and so they don't want to have it to change. And so this is an experiment for the company to really be able to say, can we change the operating system? So I guess in some ways it is a cultural transformation that we're undergoing. So I'll have to report back to let you know if that works. And then the other one is just smaller, where we've done some learning that's been distance learning, and but we haven't done a lot of that. And so we created a program to engage people who've been with the company 2 years or more, and it's actually all self-paced. It's gamified, and we're seeing how people like it. And initially we only had 45% participation, which isn't our typical participation. And so we're really trying to figure out how can we do this. Because a huge part of our population is remote, and so we're really trying to experiment with ways to engage them.
How do you manage a population that is so diverse and remote? How do you ensure that there is one culture for them?
Yeah. Good leaders. Seriously, like very good leaders, aligned leaders, like people who are really up for what we're doing and are very clear about that. Because it's like I said earlier, there's no way I can't control that. And creating a good environment for people that is consistent with the culture. The other thing I think that we've done is we've made the connection to the vision, which is to the customer, to the client, not to the company or like the headquarters. So one of the things I noticed in the past when I worked at companies that had like a big headquarter, everybody was like headquarters, like Starbucks headquarters. And it took people off of the vision. And so what we really focus on is the client that's most important. And that's who they're connected with. And I feel like as long as we connect and have that really honest connection for people with the vision, it really helps people to stay engaged and aligned with culture.
Regardless of whether or the type of work that they have.
Regardless of the type of work that they actually have. And I also think part of the piece that I mentioned earlier, which is we don't value one group over another. So a stylist is as important as a data scientist. In fact, data scientists study stylists at Stitch Fix. So they'll have a stylist come in and style, like so she's styling a person online, and the data scientist will watch her and write down everything she does because they know that she's actually in some ways smarter than the machine.
Okay. Sometimes we see culture as a little bit fluffy, and it's difficult to measure how we are progressing in evolving this culture. How do you establish measurable objectives for this transformation? How can you tell that things are moving forward?
What we did, I can just share what we did at Stitch Fix. So we created a scorecard, and we call it Stitch Fix Life. And it's 5 dimensions of things that we believe make Stitch Fix Stitch Fix. And so one of them is the ability to solve problems and be able to make decisions independently. Another one is about being able to be authentically themselves, working with kind-brained and goal-oriented people. There's a few others, and we regularly measure them. So we have an engagement survey tool, and we'll actually measure like how are we doing, you know, on those particular elements of are we actually living up to what the culture is.
Another one regarding teams. How can we empower our teams and hold them accountable for outcomes as opposed to processes and filling forms and outputs?
Filling forms. I think part of it is what I said earlier about aligning people to the strategy and vision and really focusing people on working to achieve that. I think the other one is what do you talk about and what do you reward? You know, so I think, telling stories, we were talking a little bit about this last night, the stories that you tell in an organization are the things that people will go like, oh, that's really important. So what you ask people to do. So if you're always asking people to fill out forms, but you say we want people to be innovative, you've got, again, like a dissonance. And so I think you have to make sure that your actions are lining up with your words, and then you're telling stories about things that people did that demonstrate you wanting to have people focus on the outcomes. So give a good picture.
Have you been in a place or in a situation in which you saw a conflict between what was being done and being said, or there was a misalignment between those principles, and how you resolve that? First, how you feel it, how you understand that it's happening and take it up,
right?
And then how you resolve it.
Yeah, I think I saw it. I've seen it in every company. So, but I'll pick out one on Lululemon. So the other thing I didn't talk about in my talk is every culture has a shadow side, a dark side. Because whatever you choose to do, it always has sort of a consequence that comes with it. Okay? Does that make sense? It's like people. We have our bright side, we have our dark side. And it's good to know it and embrace it. And sometimes the culture, the good part of the culture, can suppress people. And the culture can become a little bit weaponized. What happened at Lululemon was the most positive culture I've ever worked in. And I loved it. Like I love. I love every company I've ever worked in. Lululemon would teach people to set goals and create a vision for their life. I learned that and I loved it. But what it did was it was hard for people to talk about things that weren't good. And so it was hard for people to say, this isn't working. And I don't think this is right, or I don't like that. And it became sort of this forced positivity. And so in that way, I think there was a misalignment between wanting a culture where people could really thrive, but having a part of the culture, it wasn't the whole culture, but having a part of the culture that signaled to people that telling the truth about things that were good wasn't right. And every company has these, so that is, I'm sure Intercore has them, Stitch Fix has them. At Stitch Fix, we talk a lot about partnership, and that's an important value. But sometimes what happens is there's too much partnership, and then we can't make decisions. And then we get slow. And people get confused by that. And so then people are like, how do I innovate if I'm trying to get everybody to make a decision with me? It's challenging. So you just have to watch for those things.
And it's that self-awareness of a good thing can become also a bad thing.
Always, yeah.
And just watch out constantly.
Yeah, that's true. It's fun. I know it sounds scary, but it's actually fun. Fun to see it.
Okay, and I'm talking about personal responsibility and a call of action for us. What can we do to start building that culture of innovation here at Intercorp?
Well, I think this is an incredible start. I mean, I am so impressed by what you're doing, by making this available to people. I think that holding people responsible for this culture of innovation, like being able to say, this is what it looks like, and being able to talk to people about when they're doing it and when they're not doing it. I think feedback is really important, and I think it's really challenging. But to be able to be very honest, to be able to be transparent, and even as the company, I think to be able to talk to people about how you're doing. You know, because I think I'm so intrigued. I would love to spend more time here because I think the question I would ask yourself is like, if you feel like it isn't going fast enough, I think you have to ask yourself, why isn't it going fast enough? And be honest with what you see. You know, to be able to, you are the only people who know the answer to that question, not me. Like, you actually know what it would take to accelerate it. And so I think that having the courage to ask that question and then listen to the answer. Because somebody will tell you, you know, or the question could be, how could we go faster? You know, and they will tell you, like, I have found that over the course of my whole career. When I'm stuck for an answer, if I ask the people who I work for, they always have the best answer. Yeah.
So it's trusting our people as well.
Trust your people, they know the answer. They actually know the answer. There are like 25, 30 people in this room that have an answer. You all have an answer, but for sure there are at least 30 people that have the answer to that question. At least. Probably 250.
Great. I think that we are going to take some questions now from the public. So.
Sí, por favor, preguntas del público. Recuerden que pueden hacer su pregunta en español y Ana se la traducirá a Margo.
I'll try.
I'm picking out Spanish just fast.
Hi. Yep. I wanted to ask more about, instead of transformation, about starting.
Yeah.
Not only from past experiences, but sometimes hear one-liners, or I'm going to frame it a different way. Sometimes I hear they're kind of arbitrary how a culture started. They just started out of nowhere. Is that something you've encountered? Is it always founder-driven? Is it, you talk about those kinds of like starting?
Yes, that's a great question. And I would say I have more experience with that than I do with the transformation, because every company I've been a part of I've been a part of it when it's been forming the culture. And so I think the founder has a lot to do with the culture, for sure. I don't think they're the whole culture, but I do think the founder is a very significant part of it. And I think anyone who is a founder should be very thoughtful about that. And it's kind of what I said at the beginning, which is I would wish that a lot of founders would be more thoughtful about their culture as they are about the product that they're creating, and really thinking about what is going to be the organization that I want to create, what's the company that I actually want to create. And so I think the same ideas apply to creating a culture. I think you have to be, you're going to have a culture whether you do it or not, right? It's happening. And then that's what happens sometimes in high growth is people will look around and say, oh my God, I don't know if this is the culture that I actually want. And so rather than have that happen, I think you really want to be very deliberate and explicit about what it is that you're actually creating. And I think you can use the similar tools that I talked about. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Thanks.
No sean tímidos. Pregunten.
I have a question.
I was wondering when and how you decided to embark on this culture journey and how you built a career around it. Yeah.
Boy, I'm old, so that's a long answer. No, I think that he was talking about this earlier at lunch. I tried not to be in HR. Like, I really did, because I was scared and I didn't think it was going to be interesting. way that I actually had some amazing teachers and mentors who showed me the importance of culture and people. And I saw it with my own eyes. And so it was really like that. Like, it was far more interesting to me than some of the other aspects of business. There was a crossroads in my career where I could have gone more of like a business route or stayed in the human resources, and I chose to stay in the human resources because I felt like the impact was so great. And I actually had a vision, like, it sounds a little corny, but I had a vision that it could be different. And I was really excited by that and wanted to be able to create that and to learn and be able to experiment in the companies that I was in. Oh, here's some more questions. Hi.
You mentioned that in order to change the culture, to have an ambitious vision and set it out and then build it. Is there a methodology, process? How do you make sure that it trickles down and that it meets the forces from under the company to make it work?
Yeah, I think it's a really, yes, that's a really good question. So how do you, if you have the vision, how do you get it to trickle down? And I think, again, you have to think about what's the company that you're in, right? Like, what are the methods of communication? But for me, it's like you have to write it down. Like, we have an operating system. It's an image. It's a graphic. We use the same words all the time. It shows up in training classes. We talk about it every time we have a meeting. We train our managers to be able to lead in that operating system. So I feel like you have to just, every chance you have, you repeat it. You put it everywhere you can put it. You have to talk about it, and you have to actually live it and be able to highlight when you're actually living it. So I wish I could tell you, because I feel like I think everybody wants, like, here's the template, but I think it's going to be, it kind of goes back to what I said about it being personalized. So I think there are techniques and things I can share that would work, but I think you will be able to say, like, well, how do we best communicate with people here? You can make videos, you can make podcasts, you can do an in-person training, you can do so many different things with people, tell stories, you can sing a song, I don't know. There's, you can have a festival, you can do all the things, but whatever it is that works, but you have to be repetitive. And you will get tired of it. You will get tired of talking about it, I guarantee it. And you will get so annoyed when people aren't doing it, and you will just need to have your courage, and you will rally yourselves together to be able to be strong, to be able to do it. But you can't get tired. It's like, I worked with a CFO who took a company public at Lululemon. And when you go on a roadshow, when your company is going from private to public, you have to tell the story of your company over and over and over again. And he said, like, I did it like 1,000 times, and I could never get tired. That is how you will have culture.